All right, let's dive right in. We're going to talk about what comes after the silicon chip. You know, that tiny little slice of engineered sand that has, no exaggeration, powered our entire world for the last 50 years. We are on the very edge of a revolution. And trust me, it's about to get weird.
So, for most of our lives, we've lived by this simple, beautiful rule called Moore's Law. It's the idea that computer power basically doubles every couple of years. It's what gave us everything from the smartphone in your pocket to the supercomputers that predict the weather. But that nice, predictable road we've been cruising on, well, it's about to hit a very real, very physical wall.
Here's the problem. We've managed to shrink transistors, the tiny on-off switches that are the heart of a chip, down to the actual atomic scale. We're talking just 2 nanometers wide. That's so small that electrons, the little particles that are supposed to do the work, just start misbehaving. They do this thing called tunneling, where they basically just phase through barriers they shouldn't. And when that happens, you get errors. The very foundation of modern computing is hitting its absolute physical limit.
Okay, so to really get a grip on where we're going, we need to do a super fast rewind and look at where we've been. Because, the core ideas of computing are way older and frankly more mechanical than you probably think. The journey is just incredible when you think about it. It all started with Charles Babbage's complex brass gears way back in the 1820s. From there, we got electromechanical punch cards to run the US Census. That technology evolved into these massive relay computers, like the Harvard Mark I, which literally weighed 5 tons. And then finally, in the 1960s, the solid-state silicon chip arrived and just changed everything.
And what's so fascinating is that even the very first mechanical computers had error correction built right in. Babbage was smart enough to know that if one of his gears didn't land perfectly in place, the whole calculation was just garbage. So he actually designed his machine to physically jam itself to let you know something went wrong. That's brilliant, right? That's 19th century debugging.
So, if silicon is hitting a wall, what's next? Well, it's not just one thing. A whole new zoo of technologies is starting to emerge to solve silicon's problems. And it's not about finding a single replacement. It's more like building a team of specialists.
First up, believe it or not, we're kind of going back to the future with mechanical computers. These are called micro-electromechanical systems, or MEMS. I want you to picture Babbage's gear-filled engine, but now it's 1,000 times smaller and etched right onto a chip. Because they compute with actual physical movement, they are incredibly tough. They can handle heat and radiation that would absolutely fry a normal chip.
Okay, next we have this radical new idea called spintronics. Now, all our current chips, the standard CMOS ones, work by using an electron's electrical charge to represent a 1 or a 0. Spintronics says, forget the charge, let's use its spin. Think of it like its magnetic north or south pole. The benefits here are just staggering. It uses about 1,000,000 times less power, and, this is the big one, it doesn't forget what it was doing when you turn the power off.
So to really get the difference, think of a normal silicon chip like a light switch. You cut the power, the light goes off, and the information is just gone. A spintronic chip, on the other hand, is more like a compass needle. You can move it around, take away the magnet, and the needle stays put. It holds its data with no power at all. This is called non-volatility, and it could literally mean the end of waiting for your computer to boot up.
Now, there is a really interesting trade-off here. This nanomagnetic logic is a lot slower than the chips we have today. We're talking megahertz, not gigahertz. But look at the advantages. It just sips power. I mean, we're measuring it in attajoules, which is perfect for devices that need to last forever on a tiny battery. And because it uses magnetic fields instead of wires, you can stack the logic in 3 dimensions, packing in an unbelievable amount of memory.
All right, next contender, optical computing. This one's pretty simple in concept. Get rid of electrons for moving data and replace them with photons, which are particles of light. You're basically giving your computer chips nerves made of light. And light, as you know, doesn't generate heat from resistance, and it moves at, well, the speed of light. The speeds you can get here are just mind-boggling. That number, 256 GSATs SAS, that stands for 256 billion samples per second. For specialized jobs like processing images, this has allowed these chips to do things like identify the outlines of cancer cells 50 to 100 times faster than a conventional microprocessor could. It's a huge leap. Okay, so we've covered tiny machines. And we've covered beams of light. Are you ready? Because now we're going to get really weird and look at how we can use the fundamental building blocks of life itself to do our computing. Welcome to the world of DNA computing. Yeah, you heard that right. Instead of a binary system of ones and zeros, this whole paradigm uses the four letters of the genetic code, A, G, C, and T, to store information. And the calculations? They're not done by transistors. They're done by real biochemical reactions between strands of DNA in a test tube.
The absolute best way to think about this is the old story of the hare and the tortoises. A traditional computer is the hare. It's incredibly fast, but it tackles problems one step at a time, sequentially. DNA computing is a massive army of tortoises. Each individual chemical reaction is super slow, but you can have trillions of them all working on different parts of the same problem at the exact same time.
And that massive parallelism pays off in a huge way. For problems that can be broken down into tons of little parts, scientists estimate that a single drop of water packed with trillions of DNA strands could actually outperform our very best supercomputers by a factor of 10,000. It just completely changes how you think about speed. And finally, we have to go there. We have to enter the strange, the counterintuitive, and the unbelievably powerful world of quantum computing. Now, this isn't just a faster version of what we already have. This is a totally different kind of machine that plays by a completely different set of physical rules. At the very heart of a quantum computer is the qubit. Okay, so a normal bit in your laptop is either a 0 or a 1. Simple. A qubit, because of a bizarre quantum trip called superposition, can be a 0, a 1, or it can explore this whole spectrum of possibilities in between them, all at the same time. This ability to be in multiple states at once is where all of its incredible power comes from.
But what is a qubit, physically?
Well, there's actually no single answer. There is a massive global race going on right now between all these different fascinating approaches. You've got companies like Google and IBM using these tiny superconducting circuits. Others are trapping individual atoms with lasers. Some are even trying to build qubits out of light itself. It's a wide open field. And I want to be really clear, this is not science fiction anymore. In 2025, researchers actually used a quantum computer to solve a real-world financial problem in a way that provably beat our best classical machines. The era of quantum advantage, where these things are actually useful, it's here. It has officially begun. So, after looking at all of these incredible contenders, mechanical, magnetic, optical, biological, and quantum, you have to ask, which one is going to win? Which one will replace silicon? And the answer is none of them. Or maybe a better way to put it is all of them. The big takeaway, the key concept for the future, is something called heterogeneous integration. See, the future isn't some battle royale where one technology comes out on top. No, it's about creating a team of different technologies, all living together on a single hybrid chip. It's about using the right tool for the right job. So what does this future chip actually look like? Well, picture this. You've got a traditional silicon core that handles all the everyday stuff. It talks to all the other parts of the chip using super fast photonic wiring made of light. Your memory is handled by that dense 3D magnetic logic that never forgets anything. And then, for the really hard problems, it just offloads the work to its own specialized quantum coprocessor.
You know, this shift is so much bigger than just getting faster phones or more powerful laptops. This really opens up an entirely new frontier for humanity. When our computers stop being just a single tool and become these diverse ecosystems of logic, we can start to model the true complexity of reality. Think about it, designing a new drug not through endless trial and error, but by simulating exactly how it interacts with proteins, atom by atom. Or creating a climate model that's actually accurate. Or discovering new materials that we can't even imagine today. We are on the cusp of having the tools to finally find the answers to questions we once thought were impossible to even